other big news story that dropped today actually goes along with a news story that dropped a couple of weeks ago, but as I mentioned, haven't had a whole lot of time to make any content, so I didn't talk about the previous story, so I'm going to bring that up now. Dave Mustaine from Megadeth revealed last week, 2 weeks ago, something like that, that he was diagnosed with throat cancer, which is very scary shit. They also announced, along with that announcement, that they're pretty much coming off the road for the remainder of the year, which sucks because they had a whole bunch of festival appearances planned and a whole bunch of tour dates planned. Sorry, but the festival thing is what this news story is actually about. But before we get to that, I'll backtrack to the cancer thing because that's big shit that I haven't talked about yet. So we're gonna talk about it, and this was posted on June 17th, so I'm more than a couple weeks out on missing this one. My apologies. I'll read his statement. I'll read Dave Mustaine's statement on that cancer diagnosis. It says, I've been diagnosed with throat cancer. It's clearly something to be respected and faced head on, but I faced obstacles before. I'm working closely with my doctors, and we've mapped out a treatment plan which they feel has a 90% success rate. Treatment has already begun. Unfortunately, this requires that we cancel most of the shows this year. The 2019 Mega Cruise will happen, and the band will be a part of it in some form. All up to date information will be at megadeth.com as we get it. Megadeth will be back on the road as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Kiko, David, Dirk, and I are in the studio working on the follow up to Dystopia, which I can't wait for everyone to hear. I'm so thankful for my whole team, family, doctors, band members, trainers, and more. I'll keep everyone posted. See you soon, Dave Mustaine. And a little bit more has come out about that since that news broke. Like I said, I'm getting to this one really late, so again, my apologies. Pretty scary stuff, and seems to be happening a lot with a bunch of old rockers lately. You know, Keith Richards had to take some time off, or Mick Jagger. Well, Keith Richards had to take time off the road too, but it was because Mick Jagger had some heart problems that required surgery. This kind of thing happens to people that stress their bodies as hard as rock stars do, especially for as long as these guys have been doing it. I'm not saying that causes throat cancer. I'm not entirely sure. I'm just saying that these kind of ailments aren't uncommon in the world of old classic rock or old rock that's been going on forever. Even though they're not really a classic rock style of band, you wouldn't compare them to like AC/DC or anyone like that. But they're classic rock to me because they come from a classic time. I guess they come from the same time period as all these other guys. So even though they sound totally different, they're still classified as classic rock in my mind. I've seen Megadeth 3 times, 2 or 3 times. They're an awesome band, and no doubt that once he gets through this, they're going to be back on stage rocking, and he's going to come back even better. Because I just get that vibe from them. They're going to want to go over the top now. They're going to want to prove that they're indestructible, which I think they are. But throat cancer, that's some pretty scary shit. I think that's what Adam Yauch from the Beastie Boys had, MCA. I don't know if it's the same thing or anything like that. But yeah, Dave Mustaine fighting throat cancer, and that's pretty unnerving, but 90% success rate. Everything's looking good for them to get back on the road, and they're still planning on being on that boat, even if they don't actually play. They're gonna be there, and they're still working on music in the studio, which means that most of the restrictions on him from his doctors, I'm guessing, are physical as far as like performing on stage, because they're a heavy metal band, probably one of the greatest. So obviously they're pretty energetic on stage. It's not like they're George Strait, nothing against George Strait, but it's not like they're sitting up on a chair playing music. They're going crazy. It's pretty physically demanding, and so but he's still in the music making studio, which means once he gets through this and can be active, they're gonna have all new music and probably a whole new show to go out on the road with. But the news, why I bring this up, is because they were, like I said, announced for a bunch of festivals, one of them being Psycho Las Vegas. They obviously had to pull out of that as they pulled out of everything else. And today, Psycho Las Vegas announced who's going to be replacing them, and it's the original Misfits, which that's a pretty good replacement. I mean, I imagine that they were probably in contention for this beforehand, and they ended up going with Megadeth. I'm not entirely sure. The Misfits situation is weird right now because they have been playing a lot of reunion shows in recent years. They started in 2016, I believe. I think it was 2016. I was there. I was at the first one. It was the first time they played in like 30 something years at Riot Fest in Denver, and it was awesome. But I guess they're doing these reunion shows as part of some legal agreement, although they do seem to be friendly with each other again, that being Danzig and Jerry Only. And of course, they bring Doyle to be on guitar, even though he's not an original Misfit. For me, he's from the classic lineup. And like I said, they've been playing a lot of shows lately as the original Misfits, and as the band isn't back together necessarily, I guess. They're doing these shows as part of some sort of legal settlement. Not entirely sure the details there, but they're friends too. They're not going to be making any music or anything like that, not sure. But like I said, they did Denver Riot Fest, Chicago Riot Fest back in 2016. Since then, they've done a couple shows every year, including a lot this year. They played in April in Chicago, and then later this year, they're playing in Seattle and California and Denver again. And now they're playing Las Vegas, and they're just added to this already awesome lineup. Like I said, Megadeth unfortunately had to bow out, but they're still getting Electric Wizard, High on Fire, Godspeed, the Misfits. I guess I should say this festival takes place Thursday, August 15th through Sunday, August 18th. Um, it doesn't say where. I guess I should have looked into that. My bad, but the Misfits are playing on the 17th. And yeah, they're headlining tonight at this festival, filling in for Megadeth. I think that's a solid choice. And regardless if this is just part of some legal settlement or not, it's still cool to see these guys on stage a bit together, especially since there's no obvious tension or anything like that. I remember, like, whenever bands break up and then get back together for a reunion, and it's clearly not because they want to be there, sometimes you can tell. But I've had good luck with that. I saw Guns N' Roses on tour a couple of years ago. It might have been that same year. No, it was a year after. It was 2017. But they did not seem to have any bitterness at all on stage. And Axl and Slash, and I know that's because they're getting paid millions of dollars, and there's no way the Misfits are making this much just because they weren't as mainstream. I'm not saying they don't deserve it. They should be making that much. But it's cool when they're not necessarily there because they want to. They're there for money or there for legal purposes, and it doesn't show. And I that's what you're gonna get here. That's what we got at Riot Fest, and that's the beauty of punk rock is they only have to play like an hour and they get all their hits in there. When I saw them in Denver. For the first reunion show, they played like an hour and 10 minutes or something. It wasn't very long at all, and they played like 20 songs. And they got all the hits in there, Bullet and Last Caress and shit like that. So, good band to see. Awesome band for replacing Megadeth. And I have suspicions, actually, I'd be willing to put money that if Dave Mustaine is ready to hit the road again next year, then they're going to be headlining this thing next year because they seem like they're going to try to make up for everything they miss out on this year. Not for money, but because they're fans. There's a lot of people that were looking forward to seeing them, and they'll get a chance to, I think. It just won't be this year. But you get the Misfits, and I think that's a pretty fucking awesome compromise. I think there's probably a lot of people that are actually more excited about that. And I bet you there's people that go to this festival now that weren't planning on going just to see them, because although they have been playing more frequently, they took like 30 years off from being the original Misfits. Misfits were still touring as a band, but it was just Jerry Only and a bunch of other dudes. Danzig back in there completes it, and like I said, even though they've been playing a lot, they haven't been doing like nationwide tours or anything. It's just usually a couple shows a year. So there's probably a lot of people that haven't got to see them on the reunion yet that are going to go to this and probably weren't planning on going before. So, with the exception of Dave Mustaine getting cancer, this seems like good news for everybody, and it's good for Dave Mustaine too because there can't be any negativity from. It's not like he's leaving them empty-handed. Like, yeah, they're not gonna be able to be there, but they're getting Misfits to fill in for them. And I'm not saying Megadeth has anything to do with that, but it's still really cool. Like I said, I see it. You can't do anything about the cancer right now. It's here. It's happening. They have to take some time off. But this is the best case scenario for me. Dave gets to rest. Misfits are gonna bring in a lot of money and tickets for the thing. And yeah, it's just gonna make people more excited to see Megadeth when they return to the road, whenever that's gonna be. So, Psycho Las Vegas, Saturday, now going to be headlined by Misfits instead of Megadeth. I think there was